Hey, teacher friends, have you ever thought that if I could just do this all over again, I would do X, Y, and Z? And maybe you would set up your classroom differently, or you would get some more or different training, or maybe you just choose a different grade level. And for this video, I was thinking the same thing. With the same information, with the same experiences, with the same training that I now have under my belt, what would I do differently? Well, in today's video, I am sharing 4 key things that I would have done differently when it comes to classroom management starting out. If you want to know more, stay tuned. Hey, teacher friends, Michelle Holiday here. I'm a behavior strategist, and I help teachers, schools, districts, and student-based organizations with classroom management tips, strategies, methods, and systems so that they can manage their students and their learning environments with less stress and less struggle. So in today's video, we're talking about if we could do it all over again, what would we do differently? Now, here's the thing. I don't really have regrets when it comes to the journey that I had to go through to learn how to manage students in classrooms effectively. As a matter of fact, I kind of feel like it was necessary and it brought me to where I am today. But if I had to do it over again, here are 4 things that I would do. Number one, I would teach the behaviors that I wanted to see at the beginning of the school year and in the middle of the school year. I would actually teach the behaviors I want to see. So when I talk about teach, there's a different thing from teaching and from telling. Telling the students is saying, listen, this is what we expect. These are expectations, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the rules, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? That's telling them. But actually teaching them, spending time knowing what is their background understanding or the background information they have, actually giving examples of what I want to see and what my expectations look like, sound like, feel like, having us really to digest that information, really get into their heart and soul, so to speak, with this information. So really teaching it almost like I'm teaching an academic lesson. That's what I would do differently because I've learned that a lot of my students really didn't know how to do it differently. They really didn't have the skill set of it. And you would think coming in, they know, especially a lot of my students were middle school, high school, maybe like 3rd grade and up. A lot of my students were in that grade level, in my early years. And so, but I realized once I started teaching what I wanted to see, they actually started following through with those behaviors. Once I started providing examples and talking it out and reviewing it with the students, listening to how they were taking in the information, it made a huge impact on behaviors. And I'm not talking about those goody two-shoe kids either. I'm talking about those students who had major behavior problems, were often in the office, had ankle bracelets, those kind of students. So definitely the number one thing I would do is not assume that they have the behavior skill set, but I would actually teach it. Number two, I would talk about the behavior more. So instead of focusing on being frustrated, angry, mad at the system, um, lacking in confidence, I would actually talk to the students more about the behaviors I was seeing. Instead of ignoring them, wishing they would go away, hoping they would go away, we would have conversations on a regular basis, maybe even a weekly basis in early days, and then maybe change it to every other week, but definitely monthly. And I would talk about the behaviors I'm seeing, and I would attach it to maybe character or attach it to a life skill. That kind of thing is what I would do. And that would open up dialogue for students to hear my heart about it, to hear a different perspective than their peers about it. And the talk would not be a punitive talk. It wouldn't be a lecture talk. It would really be a conversation about, you know what, I am seeing the following behaviors. What are you seeing? How do these behaviors help you in your day, in school? How do they help you for life? What are some other behaviors we could use instead? Why do you think you do these behaviors, right? And so I would do it in different ways, We would have a discussion. Sometimes our discussion would be like on their do now journal, with me providing feedback for it. Sometimes it would be during one-on-one conversations or small group conversations. And definitely I would have whole group conversation, because one thing that was also very valid for me was class meetings. And those were times that we talked about what we saw, why it happened, how it affected the class, and how it affected each of the individual student. Number three is that I would allow time for practice. Like we would be practicing the behavior. So think of it like you have this basketball team, a new basketball team. If you've never been a coach, don't worry, follow me, right? So you have this new team, and some of them have been there a couple of years, and some of them are just starting out with basketball. And so you would have to what? After you teach the skill or the drill, now they have to practice it, right? Same thing with behavior. For a lot of our students, these replacement behaviors, these on task behaviors are new. This whole thing of I don't get to do what I want to do whenever I want to do it thing, for a lot of our kids, it's new. And it doesn't mean you're teaching them all about everything in life. But when it comes to being a part of a class community, when it comes to respecting one another, when it comes to being appropriate, or helpful or a leader in class, they don't know. And I thought definitely if they were in high school, they knew, but they don't know so much. And so part of our role is to teach it. And I know they don't teach this in teacher college, but that is a part of our role, believe it or not, if you want to see the outcome you want to see. So I definitely would allow time for practice. And I began to do that in my classes where I would allot time in my lesson plan even to practice a behavior. Sure, at times we were practicing the behavior while doing something academic, but my main goal was not the academic outcome, it was the practice of behavior. And for some people are like, which comes first, academic or behavior? From my perspective, behavior comes first, because how can you pay attention? How can you participate if your behavior is off the chain? So, and I actually observed a teacher who was like, I'm just going to teach and not worry about the behavior. And let me just tell you, it did not go well because he was up there teaching and they were doing whatever they were doing. So some of them were having side conversations. Some of them were like having group meetings back there. Some of them were playing games. Some of them were talking like over him, where it was hard to listen to the teacher because I couldn't hear because of the other students. So what comes first to me? Behavior and uh, behavior. So I would allow them to practice the behavior skills I teach, the replacement behaviors. And number four thing I would really do is I would spend more time on reinforcement than consequences. Now, although I believe in consequences, please hear me, I believe in them. However, I think the ratio should be 3-1, meaning you should have at least three reinforcement methods or types or activities um, than the consequences. And I'm gonna tell you, when I first started teaching, I was the opposite of that. I had like 7 different consequences going on and one reinforcer. And let me just tell you, it did not create a great classroom environment. So I decided to do things differently. And so I flipped the script and I said, well, what if I had 5 types of reinforcers and one consequence? And what if I focused on reinforcing instead of consequencing all the time as a way to change behavior? And that meant because I had a limited budget, I had to be creative. And it was fun actually to try out things. So some things I tried, they worked really well. And some of the things I'm like, we're not doing that again. So it really matured me as a teacher. It gave me more confidence as a teacher. Um, all of these strategies helped me to be so effective. So by the time I was at a certain, year in teaching, I was just flowing. It was not that it wasn't hard. It will always be challenging because every year it's a new group shoot. Every quarter there's new kids coming in. So you're having to make adjustments and you're having to grow. And then you got to work with the academic team because they have their goals that they're trying to put in. But at the end of the day, as a leader of the classroom, you have to make some decisions and some awareness of what's important. And so I just learned you can't let go of the behavior piece because you're not going to be able to teach. And when people come in and say, but you need to teach this, this, and this, I have learned to professionally have a conversation and say, I agree with you. We do need to be teaching this concept and this concept by this time of the year. At the same time, I also need to work on engagement behaviors and respect behaviors and disruptive behaviors. So both of these programs are running at the same time. And at certain times, some of this academic may have to slow down a little bit so that we can get the behavior in place so that we can come back and accelerate on the behavior. So it's so important as a teacher, as a professional, to be able to advocate for yourself in a professional way, in a way that shows that you know what you're talking about, that you do have some experience. And even if you have limited experience, still speak on what you have, what you've come to understand from being a teacher. And if they come against you again, you know what I've learned to say? Well, can you show me how to do this? Can you model for me how to do that when it comes to the behavior? I would greatly appreciate it and be open about it. But if I were a teacher starting all over today in February of 2025, this is when this video is happening, I would do these four things. I would teach the behavior like a lesson plan, that like a actual lesson that I wanted to see. I would talk about the behaviors that they need to work on, the behaviors that they're doing great at, the behaviors that let's come together and work on how we can make changes. I would allow time for practice. I can't just throw it on them and expect them to get it, because who does that? Who learns like that? Nobody, right? And so I would allow time for practice. And I would even say, okay, we're going to practice being this, or we're going to practice doing that. We're going to practice, everybody focus, no side conversations, that kind of thing. I mean, really being plain about it, and then giving feedback after the practice. And the fourth thing is I would focus more on reinforcers. When I focused on reinforcers, ways to make the behavior stronger, I saw better results, period, point blank, from elementary to high school. And I have worked with students as young as 4 years old, pre-K. Is that even pre-K? But pre-K-ish, all the way up until senior year. So those are the four things I would do. Are there four things that you would do if you had to do it all over again? If that's you, leave your four things in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.